Hey there, my name is Virgilio, Realtor at Sage Real Estate and co-host of the Toronto Living's Real Estate Podcast. Today we're talking all about condos. So if you've been thinking about jumping into home ownership and thought, should I be looking at resale or should I be looking at a pre-construction project? It's such a common question and makes such a big difference on your wallet and your lifestyle and timelines. If you're interested in finding out which one might be better suited for you, then stick around because I'm gonna break it down for you. Okay, so here's the Coles notes. If you're somebody who likes security and if you're somebody who likes to plan your dates well in advance, if you want to know exactly what you're going to be spending, when you're going to be spending it, then 9 times out of 10, resale is the choice for you. Pre-con does make sense for a specific individual. If you stick around at the end of the video, I will explain who that kind of makes sense for. It's a really big topic. So what I'm going to do is kind of just break down 3 major factors that might influence your decision, and we can kind of take it from there. So without further ado, let's get into it. First reason I'm mentioning is this is a pretty big one, is you could physically see the unit you're buying. So you can walk into the lobby, you can go up the elevator, open the door to your unit, see what the views are like, see what the layouts are like, see what the finishes are like, the construction quality. All these things you actually have, you can walk into that place and physically see. Whereas with pre-construction, realistically, you're just buying a floor plan. You're buying a floor plan and a brochure that's showing you what your unit may or may not look like with its finishes. In those big long contracts that you sign when you buy pre-construction, the builders have the right to change almost anything on the fly and with no notice. So really what you purchase right out of the gates might be completely different by the time you get possession of it. So reason number 2 I'm going to bring up is I'm going to do a finance package here. So it's supposed to be one reason. I'm going to bring up 3 points within the finance realm to try to package it a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to mention is your mortgage. So your mortgage is something that you apply for today with resale, whereas pre-construction, it's like 5 years down the line, or whenever that building gets built, basically, that's when you'll apply for the mortgage. So today, you know what your salary is, what your expenses are, where the interest rates are sitting. You can get a real good gauge of what you're spending and what your monthly payments are going to look like by the time you close. Plus, you know you can actually qualify it for that price today. With pre-construction, not the case. You don't necessarily need to be officially approved and get that mortgage today. So in 5 years down the line, let's say people 5 years ago, for instance, who purchased probably didn't think they'd be purchasing at interest rates at 6% or 6+% or wherever we're sitting at today. So you are taking a little more of a gamble at where the economy is at the time of when it closes. So the second thing I'll mention in the finance realm is the closing costs. The closing costs on a resale are they're predictable, I'll say. They're 2 to 4% of the purchase price. Your biggest expense you gotta look out for is the land transfer tax. In Toronto, you have to look out for that twice. But in pre-construction, you have what are known as development fees, and development fees can be pretty hefty. Back in the day, they used to be a little bit smaller, but expenses got expanded quite a bit over the last little while. So you could see as high as, $15,000, $20,000 for a development fee by the end of it. And, within that contract, it's really important to get a good lawyer to take a look at that, because sometimes they could have no cap on them. And if they have no cap on the development fee, then that number could end up being, even higher than that. So make sure you got a good lawyer to look through things if you are going to go the pre-construction route. But your fees are a little more predictable in the resale realm. So I'd say you have more clarity in that sense. And the third part of the financial realm I'm going to mention is what's known as the phantom mortgage. The phantom mortgage is something that only happens in pre-construction. In resale, you get your mortgage, you pay your mortgage, you're paying your principal, you're paying your interest, and that's it. In pre-construction, there's actually technically 2 closing dates. And the 2 closing dates are, one is there's a possession closing date, and then there's the physical closing where you officially apply for your mortgage. And what that is, once the building is built enough that you can actually safely possess your unit, not possess, the phantom mortgage. Once you take possession of your unit, you actually have to start paying, not a mortgage, but it's known as the phantom mortgage because you're paying what's almost considered rent to the developer. The fee's made up of 3 things. It's made up of what your predicted maintenance fees will be, property taxes, and your interest on your mortgage. And that's kind of what makes up what that monthly payment is going to be up until closing. From possession to closing, that can last anywhere from like 6 months to 8 months or a year. It could be a long time that you're paying that rent basically until you close, where you can start putting money down on your principal. So that's all the financial stuff we're going to talk about. The only last thing I'll mention is that pre-construction is much more expensive than resale is. As you're buying at resale, you're buying today's price. Pre-construction, you're buying the anticipated price 5 years down the line. And finally, the last reason I'm going to give you is dates. So again, if you're somebody who likes to plan stuff, so if you're buying resale and you've signed that agreement of purchase and sale and it says you're closing in 3 months, 2 months, whatever the date is, you can plan to book your moving truck right around that date, whether it be the day after or, you're closing on the date that's on that paperwork. With pre-construction, it's really in the air. It's very, very common for pre-construction to get delayed a year, 2 years, especially lately more than ever. So when you're signing a contract and it's promising you a year that project's going to be complete, expect it to be pushed once or twice, multiple times before you actually get possession of that unit. There's been instances where an 8-year wait was a thing. And imagine how much of your life can change within 8 years. Imagine 5 years where meeting somebody, getting a kid, maybe that 1 bedroom plus den wasn't all the room you needed at that point. So those are the 3 reasons I'll give you for pre-construction versus resale. There's tons more, but I'll say this. Pre-construction makes sense for a couple people, and I'll give you a couple scenarios. So scenario 1 is, let's say, for instance, you're a parent or a new parent or something along those lines. You're living in a house, you're very comfortable, and you want to set your child up for the future. This is something where pre-construction might make way more sense for you. You're not going to be banking on moving your life there once it closes. You're able to hold it. It can take as long as it needs to get set up. You can rent it out once it's completed, and you can give that to your kid down the line. Another scenario could be, let's say you've been renting a place for a really long time. Let's say you have a great price and you actually love the place that you're staying at. Maybe it makes more financial sense to go pre-con instead of buying a resale, because you're not planning on moving out, but it is a way to get your foot in the market, and you're able to kind of make those payments and not necessarily apply for that mortgage right away. You can be a little more flexible on all those things because you're not planning on moving your life at that time. Or maybe you are, 5 years, you'll see where you're at, but that could be another reason, keeping your expenses down and renting it out as opposed to pulling the trigger on a resale and just, moving your life at that time. There's so much more detail to get into. If you actually wanted to get into more detailed stuff, you can hear myself and Mark Savell talk about it on our podcast. I'm pointing somewhere like a link's gonna be. So the link might be here, it might be below, but if you wanna hear more about the topic, feel free to watch episode 29. It's 29, right? Episode 29 of the Toronto Living's Real Estate Podcast. So feel free to watch that if you wanted to dive more into it. If you wanted to add to the conversation, please add a comment. If you haven't already, hit the like and subscribe button. Otherwise, if you had further questions or just want to discuss it, feel free to contact me using the links below and we can get into it a little bit more. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.